from our reporters in the hardest hit areas. It's Tuesday, August 29th, 2017, and Squawk Box begins right now.
Live from New York, where business never sleeps, this is Squawk Box.
Good morning and welcome to Squawk Box here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Kelly Evans along with Joe Kernan and Michael Santoli this morning. Becky and Andrew are both off. How about U.S. equity futures at this hour? The Dow dropped more than 100 points in the futures market after those North Korea missile firings last night, and we're still down 117 points for the implied open. The S&P down 17, the NASDAQ down nearly 50. And of course, Asian stocks not taking it well either. The missile was launched over Japan. And there is the Nikkei down 0.5% this morning. The Hang Seng down about 1/3%. There's Germany down 1.7%. France down more than 1%. And by the way, the French had a good GDP number, but that is not in the limelight right now. The FTSE 100, Italy's MIB, Spain's IBEX, an outperformer. It's still down 1%, so you can see what's happening there. Dollar a 4-month low versus the Japanese yen. How about the euro, which is just sitting at $1.20 right now? Interesting that the U.S. dollar is not stronger against that. There's the yen. It's at 108.58. And the pound, just watching that one as well. How about Treasury yields as well? Trying to look for that flight to safety type of
209 earlier
behavior. Wow, 209, and now we're only up at 211. Mm-hmm. In the 30 years at 2.7, just incredible. I mean, you know, incredible low levels for all that we're talking about. In terms of the U.S. economic impact, you know, we're going to get jobless claims Thursday. We have the jobs report Friday, but you know, that 10 years nowhere near where you'd expect it to be. Certainly driven by the other events right now.
The dollar hit the lowest level, and something was January of 2015. Was that gold the highest since January of 2015?
Well, it might have been flip sides of the coin.
That was yesterday. That was before
the dollar was lower than parts of last year, but
then it wasn't. Yeah, the dollar index did hit a pretty significant level, but gold hit it hasn't been over 1,300.
Gold has been on a run, and of course the yen. You know, that's your barometer right there. By the way, the German 10-year is down to 33 basis points again. So you know you had been pushing above 0.4. People thought that was an important level, and so now we're back in that world where our yield's getting dragged down.
I think
there's the gold price, $13.25.
So after the launch, people in Japan were told to take shelter before it passed over, right?
People apparently got text messages. There were broadcasts about it because I don't know if it's part of their automatic system, but I'd be a little terrified, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Real quickly, though, just wanted that we showed the energy charts in there as well. Not a ton of movement in WTI crude this morning.
In spite of everything else happening. North Korea, as we've been talking about, fired a ballistic missile that passed over Japan early this morning, local time. That wasn't that late last night because I was awake to see it. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said it was unprecedented, serious, and a grave threat to Japan. This was the scene in Hokkaido at 6 a.m. local time, an emergency siren, followed by this announcement saying North Korea has launched a missile that may hit areas of Hokkaido. Residents were urged to take shelter. As you might imagine, the UN Security Council is going to meet later today to discuss the launch. So far, nothing from the president. Eamon Javers joins us now from Washington with more. Are you going to be able to look into the camera, Eamon, or are you going to keep looking down to see if there's a tweet? Because it's...
Well, we don't. Yeah, that's a good point, Joe. We don't know what format we're going to get a response from the White House on this issue is. We thought we might get a statement late last night from the White House, but then nothing. We've seen some communication from the Japanese side and saying that the president and the Prime Minister of Japan have spoken to one another and spoke for about 40 minutes, but we haven't gotten what's called a readout from the U.S. side. Typically, we will get that after the president talks to a foreign leader. We'll wait and see whether we see that tweet this morning from the president or whether we see official documents coming from the White House press office. Take a look at the map here, and you'll see the trajectory here of this missile. It's launched from near Pyongyang in North Korea, flies over the northern island of Hokkaido, the northernmost of the Japanese main islands, and then splashes down in 3 pieces in the Pacific Ocean. That is a very provocative launch, tricky for the U.S. To handle because it's launched from Pyongyang or nearby Pyongyang, which is a heavily populated area, a lot of civilians in that area as well. The Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, issued a statement. Here's what he had to say yesterday.
This missile, which flew over Japan, poses an unprecedented, serious, and grave threat, and it greatly damages regional peace and stability.
So although we don't have any statement from the White House yet, we did have a statement yesterday from the Pentagon, which confirmed the missile launch, said they were looking into it, and a U.S. intelligence official told NBC News there's really two reasons why the North Koreans would do this. One is they're testing their technological capability, and the other one is to show continued defiance. So the question is, in a week where we had thought the tensions were really ratcheting down between the United States and North Korea, now, in fact, it seems like they're ratcheting back up again. The president had used some very tough rhetoric about fire and fury in terms of response to North Korea earlier, and we'll see today whether or not he responds in kind. The president's going down to Corpus Christi, Texas, to visit some of the hard-hit areas in Texas and talk to first responders there and get a sense of the damage on the ground in Texas today. He'll be back at the White House tonight, guys.
We worry about, all of us as just humans, we worry about how something like this finally starts, and we hope that there's restraint on both sides. We worry about, the United States reaction. But now Japan theoretically could decide this is just too dangerous for us, or South Korea, or right. or it could be allies together. I don't know how this finally happens. Eamon, still tests though. If the guy ever actually fires something at people, then I don't know what at that point I don't know what happens at that point. Eamon.
I mean, the United States has obligations to defend Japan, right?
That's true
and its
too.
South Korean allies. So we have allies in the region.
How about Bannon's comments, Eamon? How many? He said conventional weapons. You're talking. I've seen some articles written today already that say, that Bannon had some valid points that conventional weapons, until you can get past losing millions of people with conventional weapons, there's no military option.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that Steve Bannon was criticized for just before he was pushed out of the White House, for saying that, because it seemed to imply that the United States didn't really have the deterrent effect that the United States wants to suggest that it has, right? If you hit us, we will hit you back. But the reality is a very grim reality, because North and South Korea are so close. Seoul is so close to the demilitarized zone between the North and the South that if anything were to touch off in that area, just with conventional artillery and conventional weapons, let alone the nukes that we know are on that peninsula, you could be talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of deaths in a very, very quick period of time.
How many?
And now we saw the emphasis yesterday of the missile firing to the east and what that could mean for Tokyo, for Japan, and other U.S. allies in the area. It's a very scary situation.
Crazy that we have this other huge story to come. How many months till the Olympics, Eamon?
I've no idea.
Not that many.
4? I mean, if it starts in Jan or Feb.
Isn't it? Or Jan?
Yeah. And
How's that going to work?
Months,
How's that going to work?
How many miles is that one from the border? I mean, a handful?
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Eamon.
You bet.
We are continuing to follow the latest developments along the Gulf Coast as well this morning. In the wake of Hurricane Harvey, with the rain pouring down again, here's what we know at this hour. Harvey, still a tropical storm with sustained winds of just about 45 miles per hour. Flash flood warnings remain in effect throughout Houston today. Some 300,000 people are without power in Texas. The president is headed to the region today to survey the damage, and we have full team coverage of this developing story. Brian Sullivan is standing by in Galveston, Texas. But let's begin with Contessa Brewer live in Houston. Contessa?
Kelly, right now we've just seen a garbage truck pull up, and as you can see, there are evacuees getting out of the garbage truck. They've pulled out a step ladder to help people out. Sir, how far did you have to come?
From the northeast side.
Okay, and how did you end up in the garbage truck?
Oh.
Dump truck, I think it is.
Well, that's the only way they came to pick us up, so we ain't had no other way. It was deep out there.
Go in and get dry for you. They go inside. There's dry clothes inside. People are coming in soaking wet. It's not the first time we've seen that this morning. This morning we saw a family with little kids coming into the convention center. Here's what they told me about their ordeal. How did you get here?
Through a truck from a family friend.
Can you tell me about the water and how you lasted this long?
We basically traveled from house to house until we couldn't stay there because of low food supply. And so we asked for help from people that were going through the water.
So the Salazar family came from Sheldon, Texas. That's to the northeast of Houston. And they came in with these little kids, changed out into clothes that were ill-fitting. They said that they finally had to come to the convention center because there was no food left when they were moving house to house. And again, this was a box truck that they were in. No windows, no air, but that was the way that they could get to the convention center. Back out here live now. And again, you're seeing some of the people coming off of this big industrial dump truck making their way into the convention center. This convention center was prepared to handle 5,000 evacuees. There are more than 9,000 in there now, and they said that they will just keep going. They will not turn anyone away. This is essentially a shelter of last resort. Other schools, the Houston school areas that had shelters set up, have closed them down because of safety and accessibility. We're expecting to see Southern Baptist kitchens coming in today. Typically, they can offer as many as 20,000 meals at a time. So they'll be serving not only the convention center, but the surrounding areas as well. And all those people who dropped off donations yesterday, it turns out that those donations were desperately needed because people who are coming in soaking wet from head to toe, they need to put on dry clothes, and those donations came in very handy, you guys. We're just keeping our eye on it, developing situation.
Real quickly, Contessa, is it kind of a cold and windy? How does it feel to you right there, and what is everybody experiencing? Is it chilly and windy with the rain, or is it kind of hot and humid and sticky? You know, what does it feel like?
Yeah, it's not hot. You would expect that being in Houston, but it's about 70 degrees. And with the wind blowing and the rain coming down, once you're chilled, it doesn't take very long for me. And I'm well outfitted for the rain to get cold. People are sitting in there and shivering with towels draped around their shoulders, trying to get warm. And of course, inside the convention center, it's air conditioned. So when you're already wet, it takes people a while. By the way, they're also experiencing anything else you'd experience in a small city atmosphere. Lost children, family members separated. They're just getting that safe and secure part of the Red Cross website up and running so that family members outside of Houston can check in and see if, touch base if they haven't been able to reach loved ones.
All right, Contessa, fabulous reporting. We'll continue to talk to people about supporting that rescue effort this morning. Thank you. That's Contessa Brewer. Brian Sullivan, meantime, is in Galveston, Texas, where he's been getting poured on all morning as well. What's the latest there, Brian?
I can confirm it is cold, but I think your question, Kelly, was a good one, which is when it has been hot later in the day. I don't know if it will be today. And when you've got a lot of, and Joe, of course, you guys know, as a guy who studied biology, when you got a lot of heat and a lot of standing water and a lot of other stuff, the medical implications of that are not so good. Anyway, let's move on from that. I mean, as you can see here, guys, in Galveston's getting crushed again. We actually had a tropical cyclone statement. I don't know if it's a warning, just as an alert came across the phone. It just will not stop raining and wind, and now this is going to go north, which is exacerbating the problems that Contessa and everybody else have already been talking about. The schools and everything here are going to be closed for at least a week. Everybody we talked to has said no school this week, maybe not next week. They hope there is a road to the school, etc. The damage implications, you're going to see notes. I know, Kelly, you were asking for notes this morning about J.P. Morgan saying it's going to be $20 billion. Goldman Sachs is out saying that we could see damage at $30 billion, which could shave 0.2% off GDP in the third quarter, according to Goldman. I don't know where they're getting their estimates. Who knows? I have a feeling that when you're dealing with a city like Houston, which is 6.6 million people, 3.3 million workers, a $500 billion per annum gross domestic product, 155 publicly traded companies, 20 Fortune 500 companies, just pegging estimates at 20 or 30 billion may seem a little bit optimistic. Who knows? Most of the refineries around here do seem shut. And remember, it's not just refineries. It's everything that is related to the infrastructure, to the refinery infrastructure. The port is still closed. And when it's raining like this, guys, when are they going to reopen? If things are closed because they're flooded or the roads are flooded or whatever, and it hasn't stopped raining, when exactly are they supposed to reopen? There are some reports that Exxon's Baytown facility, again, reports, I haven't gotten confirmation, I have calls in, emails into Exxon, that there may be some flooding at the Baytown facility are out there as well. I don't know how they're going to reopen anything when the roads are already bad, and as you can see, they're going to get worse because there's no place for the water to run off. In Galveston there is, but in Houston and anywhere between here and Houston, there is not. Everything remains shut, and it is still raining.
Well, Brian, even you, you and Contessa, and I complain every morning about getting up at 3 o'clock. I'm not going out into a cold rain at like 2 in the morning. Thank you for. I mean, that's rough duty, but it's duty that I'm sure you relish, and we have to do, obviously, to bring the story here. But we appreciate it and know that. But we're going to talk more now because it's called Rescue and Recovery. This isn't recovery. This is still rescue.
Yeah.
We're right in the middle of it. So more about the official response to the storm from the government and other organizations. Joining us now, former FEMA Deputy Administrator Rich Serino. You make the point, made it earlier on, I think, on CNBC, Rich, that it's very difficult to do rescue while it's still raining. Just alluding to that, Brian, obviously, is in a hotel room getting up. I mean, there are still people that are in waist-high water that need to be rescued. So we're right in the middle of this.
Yeah, we're still very much in the middle of the rescue portion of this. But one thing that's heartening is to see how neighbors helping neighbors. Just the last couple of reports, listening how neighbors brought neighbors there. Other people came to help out others. This is a very complex disaster, and it really needs the whole community, and it does start with the neighbors helping neighbors. At this point in time, it's really not us and them, it's all just us, and how do people help out. At the same time, government at the federal, state, local level mobilizing resources to help assist as well. And we've seen great work by a lot of the faith-based communities, mentioning the Southern Baptists, how they can come in and feed 20,000 people. Those are the type of things that are needed. And also looking at what the businesses can do, how private businesses that aren't impacted in the area, how they can help out, whether through charities or Airbnb that helps out others, opening up their rooms, but also looking at impacting the businesses that are there. That's going to be a long, evolving effort once they get past the rescue, because those are the workers that their homes are flooded out that are going to need to go to work going forward.
You have been you're a former FEMA Deputy Administrator, so you have firsthand knowledge and experience of how the agency works. You've been impressed so far with the coordination between FEMA and local, state, and federal authorities?
That has been impressive. The leadership that's been shown by Brock Long, the new administrator, but he's not new to emergency management. He's been around for a long time, Brock. But then you also look at Nim Kidd, who's the emergency manager for the state of Texas, somebody else who has a lot of experience. And they're communicating back and forth. And right now, everybody has that unity of mission, which is saving lives. But this is going to go on for not just days, weeks, months. This is going to be years in the recovery. But right now, all the effort, as it should be, is focused on saving lives.
People get tired, too. You make that point. The first responders, rescue people, tired, wet, cold, and that probably not as bad as it's going to get on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Plus, when the cameras leave, it's hard too, Rich. Right? You've done the first 2% of the work. You got 98% left.
Right, and this is some of the most important work is life safety. But the first responders can only go so hard. And it's time. I think sometimes we have to stop and realize the work that all the first responders, both in the local area in Houston, Galveston, Corpus Christi, Rockport, all the areas, plus the state and the national urban search and rescue teams from as far away as Boston and New York that are going down. Those people are really going to be exhausted. But having been in that situation in the past, a simple thank you when you see them really goes a long way. And I think we have to remember that the first responders, the neighbors helping neighbors, the emergency managers, the paramedics, the nurses, the doctors, the people working in the shelters, and the volunteers that are coming down, that are going to continue to come down. Those are the heart and soul of the disaster that's going to get people through this.
Rich, let me just ask you, though, now that we see how many people need help and are still only just arriving to that convention center, how can we avoid an outcome as bad as what we saw in Katrina? I mean, what kind of federal or private resources need to be marshaled right now to make sure that people have food and clothing and shelter, and not just there, as it sounds like they're already running out of space at a lot of these venues, but where, in other ones as well. That feels like a pressing need. I mean, how can we make sure that all that's getting put in place as quickly as possible?
Well, I think the communications between the federal, the state, the local governments, along with the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, the people who are actually working and running the shelters, in ensuring that the right materials can get people the water and food, the basic life essential that people are going to need. A lot of the clothes and local donations that people have had are great, but donations of materials from further away really aren't that helpful. That's when cash is helpful. To give to your favorite charity that you know of, a reputable charity, Red Cross, Salvation Army, Team Rubicon, there's lots of them, the Southern Baptist, ones that have been mentioned, that they're going to need cash to continue this long term. The initial, socks and clothes that people have in that Houston area are necessary, as we've seen, but not to ship a lot of those in, because that's going to overwhelm people, and 75% of that actually never gets to people later on because there's just so much that can't even be sorted. So right now, it's really, for people who aren't in the immediate area, cash is really what's needed.
Rich Serino, appreciate it. Thanks. Former FEMA Deputy Administrator. Thanks for getting up early today as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And coming up, global markets under some pressure this morning after the North Korean missile flew over Japan. The dollar under pressure as well. We're going to talk strategy after a break. And a programming note, tomorrow Warren Buffett will join Becky Quick live in New York at 11 a.m. Eastern on Squawk Alley. Squawk Box will be right back.
This CNBC program is sponsored by Payden & Regal, offering global investment solutions.